Microphone number 19. Anyone like to speak to it? Number 10. Number 10, sorry.
Chief Mitchell, I seconded because I like the word explore. Because it doesn't say it's written in stone. It just says, whereas passed resolution to explore the amalgamation. Okay.
Any other discussions on the resolution? Question's been called. All those in favor? Against? And those that, are that consensus or those against? Against when? Or was that for?
That was for the first one.
Okay, sorry. But that was consensus. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Or abstention? Do you ask abstentions too?
No.
Abstention, can't even say. Oh, one abstention. Thank you, that's been passed.
I'm sorry. Mike number 9 has their hand up.
Oh, sorry, mic number 9.
Are we approving the amendments to the Constitution, or
Yes.
what is it? I mean, I'm still concerned about the whole process myself. I don't think the amendment provisions of the Constitution have been followed. I mean, when you're trying to change constitutions, in my opinion, I think it's supposed to be difficult to make any amendments to the Constitution, and I still think we still need 2/3 of the chiefs here at the table to make any amendments to the Constitution. So I can't support it, to be honest with you. I mean, I think what we should do is maybe have a special assembly to deal specifically and only the Constitution, because it's a major document that's going to impact, the way we conduct business. And I seriously have concerns about it, so I can't really support it.
Thank you. It's noted on the record. The next proposed resolution for your consideration is the nice little map that was identified, or the restructuring of the approach, the political approach that the AMC takes, but also amalgamation of your committees. So the idea is reduce the number of committees so that there's not so many, and the work that the governance committee did, you heard Christina go through that. Therefore, be it resolved that the chiefs agree to amalgamate the chiefs committees and agree to the proposed political structure. Is there a mover for that? Microphone number 26.
Hello, Chief Batson. I think I'm still a bit confused on what this exactly means when you say exploratory amalgamation of our First Nation political structures and organization in Manitoba, AMC, SCO, MKO, and Regional Chief's Office. So are you wanting to amalgamate with those organizations as well?
That's a separate resolution. So this resolution is just in regards to the committees, and it's not abolishing or amalgamating any specific committee, but it is exploring with your governance committee whether or not any committees can be put together or partnered or amalgamated.
Okay, so say for example, SCO has a Chiefs Health Committee, Chief Health Action Table or Committee. You're wanting them to amalgamate with AMC if they have?
No, this specific resolution is only for AMC committees. There's currently on the books 15 committees. There's 8 permanent committees, and some of the committees that are technically on the books have not been active for a number of years.
Okay, well, that's not how this is reading to me. Like, I don't know, like I understand the committee's aspect, I understand that. But here it says amalgamation of our First Nation political structures, sample attached, and organization in Manitoba. AMC, SCO, MKO.
That's a different resolution.
No, it's on the same paper. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay,
It's on, yeah, it's the one amalgamation of AMC chiefs committees, and it's in there.
okay,
Where's that?
so,
Thanks, Chief. So in November, when that resolution was for the exploration, that was all it was. And I'm sorry, I'm speaking on behalf of the committee, but the committee did meet and attempt to have a meeting with MKO, SCO, and a regional chief. The meeting didn't happen. I think the 2 out of the 3 attended, and the discussions of bringing them together or getting rid of it, that never happened, and that was never the intention. The intention was to try to work together. The Chiefs Committee only is looking internally at the AMC structures. The structures that are being proposed here is just for AMC and AMC mandated entities.
Okay, can that be redrafted then to remove
Okay.
that part out of there?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll table that for, I guess I'm the resolution table too. For revisions, Melanie or Kayla. I don't know.
I haven't noted.
Microphone 9.
10.
Chief Mitchell, I don't support a redrafting because I don't know what those little green and blue and gray balls look like. I can't read that writing. And I refuse to acknowledge that I need other glasses. I'm not that old yet. But I think it warrants discussion because we haven't seen what that is. I think you should just throw it out since obviously you can't get a mover and a seconder. Scrap it.
Sounds like it's been scrapped. Or maybe tabled. Because maybe clarifying the wording and then also explaining that might be a little bit better for the committee to do. Thank you. The next proposed resolution was a role and responsibilities of the AMC Grand Chief. In the document that was shared with you, I don't know if I've got one here. No, it's not the resolution, the actual document.
I have it right here.
Which just has draft all over it and dated July the 30th, identifies some specific things within it. It clarifies the authority and mandate on page 1. It identifies the election and term and diplomatic and political relations, how the Grand Chief is to conduct his or herself. Goes into more clarification of reporting and accountability, has a statement of values, and has a code of conduct, and also some disciplinary or removal from office provisions. Excuse me. The headings themselves refer to provisions of the Constitution where this is dealt with, and there's more stuff that's been added to it. So it's not like something brand new, but for the statement of values and the code of conduct. So for instance, the authority and mandate comes directly from Article 13 of the Constitution. The election in turn comes from Articles 11 and 14. Diplomatic and political relations is identified in Articles 1 and 13. And that speaks to how the Grand Chief shall be guided by First Nation traditional values and traditional teachings, and what the political role as the principal spokesperson is for the AMC. The reporting and accountability provisions is actually spelt out and identified, taken from Article 13 of your Constitution. Statement of values, which is something new, is identified as the principal spokesperson. The Grand Chief should conduct herself or himself at all times following various values and principles, including respect for democracy, respect for people, act with integrity, honor of the office, avoiding conflicts of interest, stewardship, and excellence. As well, on page 3, there's a code of conduct that identifies the conduct of the Grand Chief. That's specifically to be carrying out the duties with honesty, conscientiousness, and loyalty, be prompt, courteous, and temperate, to use innovative solutions, to administer and interpret and explain the mandate of the AMC, recommend changes to policy, conduct that will bring credit to the AMC, not engage in public criticism of First Nations in Manitoba, make sure that the information she or he obtains as Grand Chief is just used for AMC purposes, actively does their job, make sure that information is not released that shouldn't be released, and that making sure that the use of equipment, property, or supplies that are owned or rented by the AMC are used for authorized purposes only. And there's also disciplinary or removal from office provisions, which didn't really get spelt out very much in the Constitution itself. This goes into a little bit more detail because the AMC staff or the employees have a policy manual that covers their activities and actions when working with the Secretariat, but there's nothing for the Grand Chief. So this has been spelt out here. Gives a little bit more detail of what's identified at Article 14 of your Constitution. And then Schedule 1 is the oath of office on the back page there. So this is a proposed role and responsibility of the Grand Chief for draft resolution number 6. And it reads, where the committee has reviewed certain things and directed the Secretariat to come up with some role and responsibilities, that the Chiefs and Assembly agree to adopt the attached Grand Chief role and responsibilities mandate. Is there a mover for this? Microphone number 26.
Chief Batson, I'll move to adopt the resolution.
Is there a seconder? Microphone number 5.
Councillor Johnson from Black River, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Is there discussion? I heard someone say question. Or you want a question? Okay. Yeah. Number 30.
Just wanted to ask the question, is there, and I haven't looked at the Constitution and the documentation that we have, but how does this differ from what we currently have in place? Is there anything in place?
Thank you, Chief. There's nothing in place. So this actually, for the first time, puts some roles and responsibilities for your Grand Chief on paper and directed by the Assembly. So there's nothing currently other than what you can read into your Constitution, but it's very, very light.
Okay.
I heard question. All those in favor? All those against? One against? And abstention. That's been passed. Awesome, thank you. Now similarly, for the Grand Chief, there is for role and responsibility for the Regional Chief. Oh, sorry. Walking quickly through it because we basically cut and paste and did a search and just kidding. Actually we did.
Half kidding.
So we've also got very similar stuff. It's a little, there's some minor differences. Really, the accountability structures and the removal goes directly from the Grand Chief to you. So it's not the executive. He's accountable to you. He or she is accountable to you. Potential removal by you, chiefs and assembly. In the approach to the regional chief, it's a little bit different. But the authority and mandate for the regional chief is also spelled out in your Constitution and spelled out at Article 15. And that's to make sure that he or she is reflecting your position in the Chiefs and Assembly, the Grand Chief's Office, and the Executive Council of Chiefs. So it's more closer attuned to regional representations and decisions that are made in Manitoba here. Also identifying diplomatic and political relations, similarly guided by traditional values and teachings. There's an oath of office. There was some discussion, actually it's at number schedule just in the back, just like the other one, for Grand Chief. There was some note that there was, by the current regional chief, there was some challenges that he swears an oath of office to the AMC and at the same time swears an oath of office to the AFN. So we're making sure that the oath of office here is for swearing the oath of office to you, to the AMC. The role is spelled out in your Constitution for the regional chief at Articles 13 and 15. And similarly, what you had heard Christina identify some of those proposed approaches that are more attuned to the AMC Chiefs and Assembly. There's also requirements for reports, work plans, and records, which are consistent with the wording, not in your Constitution, but actually in the funding agreement with AMC and AFN for what she or he is supposed to be doing in terms of reports and stuff. So just making sure that it's clear and that it's reporting as well to you, not just to the AFN. As well, the term is spelled out in your Constitution too, which is 3 years, and she or he can be re-elected. The remuneration is determined by the Executive Council. There's a proposed code of conduct as well. And then there's also identified disciplinary or reprimand process, which allows for the executive to have to deal with some things that can be dealt with by the executive as opposed to having to come to the assembly, as maybe we heard some comments made about this process that had just happened at the Special Chiefs Assembly as well. So this is a role and responsibilities for the regional chief, and similarly, draft resolution number 7 proposes that the chief and assembly agree to adopt the attached regional chief role and responsibilities mandate. Is there a mover for this resolution? Oh, sorry. Oh, 23 and then 26.
Chief Batson, I just have a question, I guess, just along the lines of what the other chief asked about. How is this differed? Was there one before? Was there one like this before, or is this all new for the regional chief? This document?
Yeah, like the Grand Chief, there was nothing in place before. So there is your constitution. There is the funding agreement as well that requires the reporting requirements, but that reporting requirement isn't to you, it's to the AFN. So this is brand new. Microphone number 23.
Hi, Chief Anderson, I make a motion for the resolution.
Thank you. There's a mover. Is there a seconder? Microphone number 10.
Chief Mitchell, second the motion.
Discussion. Question's been called. Those in favor? Those against? One against and abstention. And one abstention. Resolution passed. Where are we at? Speaking of the regional chief, the discussion points that Christina brought up with respect to the conflict that exists right now within your constitution, well, not your new constitution, I guess, but probably, because your election rules for the regional chief are different than your constitution. So not all AMC members are able to vote for the regional chief. And the purpose of this resolution, amendments to the rules for the election of the regional chief, is to reflect changes to the regional chief, no longer the AFN regional chief, but the AMC regional chief, but also making sure that all your colleagues at the AMC are able to vote for the regional chief. So that, therefore, be it resolved, just sort of identifies the striked out words and then adding in who can vote. So AFN's been struck out and AMC underlined has replaced it. Who would like to propose to move this resolution?
Councillor Oral Johnson, Black River. I move to move this motion.
We got a mover.
Self-explanatory.
Awesome, thank you. We got a mover, do we got a seconder? Going Wednesday. Oh, sorry. Microphone number 10.
Chief Mitchell, I second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion. Oh, sorry. Microphone number 9.
I think the people who can vote for the regional vice chief, I think, should be expanded to council members as well.
Thank you.
Same position I have with election of AMC Grand Chief.
That will also be noted and brought back to the governance committee. Your constitution can change either at an annual assembly or a general assembly as well. So a proposed change to your constitution, in theory, could be done at another general assembly. So thank you. Any other comments or question? Question's been called. Those in favor? Those against? Those abstaining? Resolution's been carried. I think there is one more, but I don't have it. Is this the policy one? The policy.
Mike 26.
Oh, microphone number 26, sorry.
Hello, Chief Batson. I was going to abstain on that vote.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, microphone number 7.
I'm really sitting on the fence with this whole, I just want to say something. I know some people may not like what I have to say, but you know, over the years, we've had these elections for the Grand Chief, the Regional Chief, the AFN National Chief, and our people have always expressed how, like, it's us that make that decision, right? And we're supposed to be the spokespersons for our communities. And they also, they feel they're entitled to being the ones to vote. Like I always hear that when there's an election happening. And I also know that it would be a huge expense if you were to move in that direction. But I guess with giving our people that voice and maybe changing the way we do things, you know, wouldn't be perceived as being selecting our friends or selecting, you know, that nepotism that's always being assumed when we are in our roles. And that's why I'm kind of abstaining from it, because I don't know. I'm kind of siding with that type of decision. I don't know what others feel, but for me, that's how I feel. Like I think our people. There's no guarantee that me as a chief, even if my council tell me who to vote for, there's no guarantee that I'm going to vote for that person. Nobody will ever know, right? Because it's a vote that nobody knows about. So it's just me. So that's how I'm just kind of like sitting on the fence with this whole election, the way we run our elections with leadership and how it's being perceived by our own people. Like it's like the odd time when I know that there's an election coming up, you know, for the regional, the Grand Chief. Like there's just a few people that I talk to at home, and you know, they ask me what I think, and I share what I think. But again, it's like that's my decision. It's not really a decision that the people have voted on, right? And that, I'm sure that happens in every community. So I just needed to say that. I don't know what, like I'm really, like I said, it's something that we really need to think about, and we talk about grassroots all the time, you know? Grassroots are the ones that put us where we are. So to be transparent and accountable to our people, I find that I don't know if that's a direction we need to consider at some point in the future. I don't know. But especially with all this stuff that had been going on in the past while, and the day and a half that we spent, you know, discussing and debating and sharing, that, like, things like that, you know, that if that vote had happened with our people, it would be something that they are responsible for, not necessarily us. So, I know, just something to think about. Thanks.
Chief, I'm really glad you brought that up because that was briefly discussed at the Chiefs Committee, but you're reminding me of what a number of elders told me back in the day where Norway House wasn't following white man secret ballot rules from the Indian Act, and that there was a traditional process in which leadership was selected where heads of households stood behind their folks that they wanted to be in that position. And I think Treaty 3 does an interesting process, which isn't what we just did 2 days ago. And I think that discussion is a really good thing to flesh out. And how that comes from the First Nation to here as well also needs to be done. It might be easier in a smaller First Nation, but for Norway House, where you got tons of people not only on reserve, but also off reserve, getting that identification is really hard. And then why should it only just be the councillors, right? So when we looked at this, and when AFN's looking at and struggling with this as well, I think, because they're looking yet again, looking at their charter renewal, giving everybody that individual vote, right, is going to cost a whack of cash. Money which could probably go to better serve some other things. But I'm not one to talk on that, but that's a really good discussion point that I think you should have. Dennis, do you want to say something else? 30.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, certainly open to our grassroots having that say. And it's been structured, it is what it is today. And obviously there's changes that are being proposed and made here, but each community is different, and you can do a poll, I guess, in terms of who you would like to see as your Grand Chief, the Regional Chief, whether that comes just from your council, or whether you want to take that back even further and have the grassroots determine that. You can vet that through your own community. So making sure, you're hearing what the community has to say, what the council has to say, and then bring that forward in terms of eliminating the huge expense that will be associated with that. And I guess, to me, it is what it is today. And I guess it has been in place for some time. We always look for areas for improvement, but again, it is the cost associated with carrying that out, but each community can vet that. And one of the other things, I was just reading through this, what we had passed, the regional chief must have proficiency in the use of computer software, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Not all our leaders within the community are literate. Some are illiterate, but very, very valued in terms of their word, their experience, and this sort, right? So I guess you can look at it from both perspectives. And our history has been an oral history, right? And I don't shy away from that, but at the same time, I know, where do we draw the line, I guess, in terms of putting these things in place. Yesterday and the day before, as I stated to other chiefs, that's how we've always done it, to have that, maybe that one line, that provision, but we sit and deliberate, just like, me and my wife would do at the kitchen table sometimes, deliberate and make a decision. There's nothing formal stating we got to do this or we got to do that. It's what you can reason as far as that best outcome is concerned, and I guess that's what our predecessors and our ancestors has done too. It's not always we had computers, not always we had pens and paper to write on. Sit down and work it out and deliberate it. So I just wanted to make that point known too, because there is a tradition there, a history, and that's something that I think we need to maintain to a certain degree.
Excellent, thank you. 26.
Chief Batson, Pine Creek First Nation. I think just with some of the points that have been raised already, there needs to be a much larger and fulsome discussion about this resolution specifically. And even the title is a bit confusing. It says amendments to the rules. Are we actually changing rules? Because from what I can see, it looks like we're just changing AFN to AMC. So it's more of a name change than a rules change. But I think with just some of the points that have been raised, I think we need to set this aside for now and look at it at a different time. Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief. So recognizing what Chief Hudson had identified and also that this is, you can always review it. Do you know what I mean? Like you could even come back and have a specific, assembly or portion on your next agenda to further this discussion. Right now, respectfully, Chief Batson, there is a conflict between the Constitution itself and the election rules. So right now, those that aren't IAMFN members can't vote, which I think is only, what, one or two? One. Yeah. First Nation that can't participate in the vote for regional chief. That's what's on the floor right now. But this other discussion in terms of how you approach voting and all that other kind of stuff, and really maybe is struggling with sort of approaching a decolonized lens to some of the business that you do, is really interesting and stuff, and doesn't prevent you from continuing to have that discussion. But I just wanted to respectfully point that out, that if we were to table it, it would still have that conflict there in terms of the rules, because it is the election rules. That's why it's referred to the rules, election rules for regional chief. There was a mover, there was a seconder. Any discussion? Further discussion?
Councillor Oral Johnston from Black River. I moved the motion with considerable thought on the changes in the articles that you've already done for Regional Chief, Article 15, along with the recommended motion. I just simply thought that it is a living document and it can be rediscussed in future assemblies. So that's why I moved this motion to move the business along. Miigwech.
Thank you. I've heard question was called. Those in favor? Those against? Those abstaining? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 abstentions. Resolution's been carried. One more, and then we're done, I think. Resolution number 9 is called AMC Policies and Procedures, with an S, for elected and appointed officials. So the discussion that was identified before was there are no rules for the Grand Chief, the Regional Chief, or quite frankly, respectfully, use when you're on committees, when you're in assembly, when you're an executive, when you're on an AMC appointed mandated entity. And so the idea was provide some guidance or rules or policies and procedures that identify some of that. And how to go forward. It identifies a proposed code of conduct, which at number 2 on page 4 speaks to all AMC representatives, and representatives are those chiefs, grand chief, regional chief, those that are doing AMC business, are expected to carry out all duties of their position within the AMC honestly, conscientiously, and loyally, represent the AMC in a positive manner, cooperate and communicate with AMC staff, administer and where necessary, interpret and explain the mandate of the AMC to the general public, recommend within their sphere of responsibility changes to policy where they believe are appropriate, conduct themselves in a manner that will bring credit to them and to the AMC while doing their duties, not engage in public criticism of approved organizational policies, use information obtained from the AMC for their intended purpose, make all efforts to attend meetings, not make any public or private statements on behalf of the AMC without specific authorization, or use any equipment, property, or supplies which are owned or rented by the AMC for authorized purposes only. It also speaks to confidential information, that information that you receive in whatever capacity that you have with work related to the AMC remains confidential. Unless otherwise so directed, an AMC representative shall not make statements to the media, all forms of media, including social media, on behalf of the AMC. It then specifically identifies a conflict of interest and goes into a definition of conflict of interest, which are threefold there. Conflict of interest occurs when an AMC representative acts, votes, or has information or makes a decision in the course of their duties that may result in personal gain, or has a financial interest for related individuals. A conflict of interest also occurs when an AMC representative or relative has a material, personal or financial interest, such as a gift or a benefit as well. So the rules then specifically identify how to deal with potential conflicts for Grand Chief and the Regional Chief, and then a Chief as well. And then also at 3.5 on page 8, as a member of a board or committee or entity as well. Oh, 26.
Hello, it's Chief Batson again. Our paper only starts on page 5. I think we're missing some, because some of the things you're reading we don't have in our package.
I'm sorry, Chief. I heard that from another chief as well. Oh, it's from, sorry, Chief, yes, from you. Dang, what? Oh, the even pages are missing. That's odd. Nah.
Not even. Oh my God.
So everybody's got like, oh, sorry about that. Dang. It just
Came
starts
up
a
with a good
fire.
one.
Statements. Can I ask another question while my mic is
Yep.
on here? For clarification, okay, so one of the bullets states use information obtained from the AMC for the intended purpose, not for their own interests or those of other persons. And then another one following, the next one down from that, not make any public or private statements on behalf of the AMC without specific authorization of the AMC. So does that mean like we can't make, what do you mean by public and private, that we're not allowed to make any comments on things like maybe that would be affecting our community or as leaders in our community? Like are we supposed to vet everything through the AMC as far as comments that we would make in regards to certain issues?
No. Christina?
It's on behalf of. So we ask that chiefs not individually make public statements or private statements to their community that the AMC thinks X, Y, Z, or that the AMC is going to do X, Y, Z. But you can make comments about, right? But you just can't say that I speak on behalf of the AMC and they're going to do 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so are you referring to, like, say if you are on a committee, one of the committees there, you can't speak on behalf of that committee or as a representative of AMC?
No, because by being on the committee, you would have specific authorization, right?
Okay, and how does that impact us as leaders in our communities?
It
Then,
means that
like-
without authorization.
Like it's kind of a slippery slope, like how do you know, like we're trying to juggle two roles, like we have to be
Right.
leaders in our community, advocate for our
Right.
people, but yet we may not be in agreement to some of the things that even happen within these committees or decisions that are made, because some of these decisions or most of them are made by quorum.
Right.
So if we don't agree with something, we are not to state anything about it?
No, you can say anything about it, but no individual chief, save and except for the Grand Chief, is authorized to say that I speak for the entire Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs and we're going to institute a policy of something, of a change in the electoral rules. But you can report back to your communities and the public about, your involvement on the committee, but you can't say that, unless you're specifically asked, that I speak for the entire AMC in terms of jury selection or something, because that's something that, as far as I'm aware, hasn't been discussed by the AMC, and the AMC maybe doesn't have a position. So unless you're specifically authorized, you can speak on your own behalf and you can speak on behalf of your nation, but unless the AMC has a published position on something, you can't say that I speak on behalf of the AMC and I think that we should mandate jury selection requirements for outside of the electoral process.
Okay,
Do we have double-sided for everybody?
yeah, I think I have a bit of an issue with that in regards to, because some chiefs may be chairs or head up other committees or be involved in other committees other than AMC. So, for example, SCO or MKO. So if that committee or group or initiative, if they're doing their own thing and you're the head of that and you make a statement and it may go against what AMC is planning or doing, does that mean that we're going to be disciplined for that? Because we're acting on behalf of our other committee or we're as chair of another committee. So are we having to sort of watch what we say in regards to our other committees that we sit on outside of AMC? So
No.
that it doesn't conflict with what?
No, there's no conflict there. So if you sit on another committee with like SCO or the John Howard Society or any other committee, and you represent to that committee in your personal capacity or your capacity as a chief, that's fine. You can make any statements that you want. But if the AMC has no official position as to judicial interim release, if the AMC has no specific provision about GLADU reports, you cannot go to your John Howard meeting and say, I speak on behalf of the AMC and we think that there should be GLADU reports for something, something, something.
Okay, so we just have to be specific in saying who we're representing at that time and who we're
Right.
speaking on behalf of.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Where was I? Sorry. Oh, wait, are we getting more copies? Can we put it up on the screen? Steve? continuing after conflict, there's one line, because I gutted most of it out in terms of monitoring honorarium, and I'm not even sure if we need this provision in terms of benefits. All AMC representatives must report to the AMC all benefits that they receive conducting their duties. That's a standard thing that you're supposed to be doing in any event, but then there's leave with respect to some of the issues that was identified. It's an attempt, and I feel uncomfortable with proposing this because you can't tell chiefs what to do in any event, and even if you have these rules, what are your colleagues going to do? But on the other hand, at least it provides some guidance and provides some process and procedure, and that was the intent with these. And again, they can always be examined within a year. They can always be brought back, and they can, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not set in stone. So there's leave because there's work that you have, but there's reasons why you don't attend. You miss 3 in a row and then you're gone, which kind of is ridiculous. And then disciplinary action for representatives that excludes the Grand Chief at page, you don't have the pages or anything. Then there's also discipline and reprimand, and then a record and remedy. That's for representatives excluding the Grand Chief, and then there's a process identified specifically for Grand Chief. And then there's also a specific, because this isn't your constitution, but there's no rules or anything. So we kind of try to put a little bit of meat on the bones as it relates to what kind of process that might be considered. And then there's also identified at number 7 for page 14, a respectful atmosphere policy, which deals with harassment, goes into detail on that. It also talks about prohibitive grounds of discrimination, personal harassment and abuse of authority.
We have copies if you want to raise their hand.
Coffees?
Copies?
I'll take a coffee.
Okay. We have
Copies.
double-sided copies.
We have double-sided copies. Sorry about that. Who needs double-sided copies?
28.
So everybody has one except... Okay, I'll just keep going.
28 and 30, please. And Councillor Kent, do you need a double-sided copy too? Do you need a double-sided copy too? Okay. And 22?
Excellent. So the respectful atmosphere policy deals with harassment, deals with discrimination on prohibitive grounds, which are found in the Human Rights Act, deals with personal harassment, abuse of authority, and then what the responsibilities are for representatives as well. We also have a proposed procedure for AMC representatives that is for those that are not the Grand Chief, and then for the complainant's rights and responsibilities, and a respondent's rights and responsibilities with respect to the process as well. We can go into more detail, but we also do have a proposed draft resolution number 9. Whereas the Constitution sets out the rights and responsibilities of AMC elected and appointed officials, whereas the AMC would like to establish detailed policies and procedures, please excuse me, and whereas the Secretariat has drafted these proposed policies and procedures, therefore be it resolved that the Chiefs and Assembly adopt the AMC policies and procedures for elected and appointed officials as attached. Would someone like to move this resolution? Microphone number 24.
Chief Anderson, I'll make the motion.
There's a mover. Is there a seconder? Microphone number 10.
Chief Mitchell.
Seconders, Chief Mitchell. Discussion. I heard question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Those against? Those abstaining? One abstention? Two abstention, three abstentions. The resolution has been passed. I think that's it for governance. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's it for governance, and we did education according to the agenda. I've seen the policies where you stated that some of the chair people changed the agenda, and I don't want to be accused of that. Governance, the next one is health. Are the health presenters here? And Melanie? We'll have the health report, and that'll be your final for the day. Microphone 10. 10.
Chief Mitchell, I know we're going to go into health, but I have a resolution asking for, and Marcel is working on it, requesting funding to pursue critiquing and discussing all the bills that have been passed, so that we can come together to discuss them and what effects they're going to have, long-term effects they're going to have, and our strategy for moving forward on all those bills. It's going to come about. I just want people to know that it's going to be on the table, and I'd like support for that resolution. It was based on the discussion with the Minister Secretary.
Okay. So just so that you know that there is another resolution from the floor that will be coming forward, and we would ask the chiefs to remain until we have had an opportunity to deal with that. And I think, as you have heard from the chief, it's an important way in moving forward and defining our own jurisdiction. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the health people, and maybe they'll make us well.
Thank you, Dennis. Good afternoon, chiefs, proxies, and my colleagues and community members. I'm going to be brief. I believe all of the health information that you need is under tab 4. There is a 11-page update of work done to date, and then just some ideas of how to move forward. But I do want to outline a few items within that document. There's also a briefing note related to the reestablishment of the Chiefs Task Force on Health. There's a draft resolution to that effect as well. There'll be another resolution tabled with respect to the creation of a joint committee between AMC and FNIB over the decision-making of FNIB's in federal investments, and then a resolution as it relates to tripartite discussions in health transformation. So I believe most of us know one another, but for those that don't know who I am, I'm Melanie McKinnon. I'm originally from Espoused Cree Nation and also a citizen of Pimicikamak Cree Nation. And I work at the Assembly on the Universal Health Accord project on a part-time basis while I'm still in my other capacity as the Executive Director of Ongomas and Health Services at the University of Manitoba. And I also support Cross Lake in their health plans with respect to a new complex. So I've been doing this work now going on 25 years, and I'm really blessed to be able to work on behalf of the communities and be able to work on behalf of yourselves. But I want to tell you that for the first time in a long time, I'm actually really excited. I never thought we would be in a time where we're able to collectively plan and design a healthcare system that's based on our needs and based on our desires and our wants, as opposed to the one that we've inherited over the past 50 years that was designed for us, not by us. And so I'm excited at this time. I know that we also have challenges with respect to some of our learned behaviors as it relates to our relationships, our internal relationships, as it relates to some of the lessons learned with the dangling carrot and the competition over scarce resources and the poverty paradigm and all of the ills that our communities are faced with respect to their health and lack of wellness. But I do feel like we're at a time where we can overcome much of that. And but in the way we do that is what's going to be really important in the decisions that you're going to make together. The work that we've done over the last year, with that said, has been